Welcome to the week that was, but we mostly wish it wasn't, for the week ending September 12th, 2025. This is a weekly roundup of the highlights and lowlights of campus anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. This week I had about 45 stories to choose from as things begin to amp up with the beginning of the school year. If something is happening in your neck of the woods, please be sure to let me know. I'm your host, Andrew Pessin. I'm a professor. Please don't hate me. For more about me and my work, visit andrewpessin.com. For all the details of today's stories and loads more stories, follow me on X at Andrew Pessin. We start with some important pieces published this week. The Anti-Defamation League published a backgrounder report on the growing chapters of Faculty for Justice in Palestine, the analog to Students for Justice in Palestine, only ultimately more threatening. A new survey was also published this week by the ADL in conjunction with the Academic Engagement Network, which is a terrific organization supporting Jewish faculty members on campuses. The report reveals, shocker, that most of the anti-Semitism on college campuses is fueled by faculty and staff. Some three-quarters of Jewish professors reported experiencing or directly observing anti-Semitic incidents or statements on their campuses by fellow faculty, administrators, or staff. Okay, let's get to the news. Lead story today comes from the frozen tundra up north in Canada, Western University. Jewish students infiltrated a pro-Palestinian chat group on campus and uncovered a veritable cesspool. There were tips on how to conceal knives at protests, Hitler memes celebrating 6 million Holocaust victims, threats to pop some Israelis and use rocks to fix Jewish students' brains. There was strategic anti-Semitism coaching. Call them Zionists, don't call them Jews. Western University was presented with all this time-stamped evidence, but chose not to prosecute or follow up. At Queens College this week, an Israeli law professor was interrupted only minutes into her online Zoom lecture about the erosion of rights of women and sexual minorities in Israel this week. The disruption involved what appeared to be a large group of attendees suddenly turning on their cameras and microphones and yelling slurs, including "kill all the Jews" and "go back to Auschwitz." Instead of faces on the screen, pornographic and disturbing images appeared, including pictures of dead bodies and male masturbation. Please note that this professor is a critic of the Gaza war and appears to be quite critical of many things about Israel and its government, but was targeted anyway. This lecture was sponsored by the Center for Jewish Studies there. Northwestern had another busy week. There were some revelations from the now resigning president's closed interview with Congress a few weeks back. It was revealed that a clause in the contract Northwestern has with its Qatar campus effectively prevents students and faculty from criticizing the Qatari regime in any way. It's actually against the law in Qatar to criticize the government, and they ban the posting of online content that criticizes them. And indeed, a Northwestern Qatar student was arrested over a tweet. I wonder how that policy complies with Northwestern's commitment to freedom of speech. It's also the case that the anti-Semitism training being offered at Northwestern's American campus is not offered in Qatar. The president said, "I don't know what the reason would be for that disparity." Since Northwestern opened its Qatari campus back in 2008, Qatar has provided the school with 737. Also at Northwestern, a Middle East Forum investigation revealed that Northwestern employs a professor at the Qatar campus who founded an organization that laundered money for Hamas. This professor teaches a mandatory course for American exchange students at that campus. And meanwhile, the new president who's coming in was actually was a previous president, and he was the one who was the main force behind setting up the Qatar affiliation in the first place. Makes one wonder, per The Who, whether the new boss is quite literally going to be the same as the old boss. At Harvard, new mandatory student training apparently equates criticizing Hamas supporters with racism. It dictates that calling someone a terrorist sympathizer violates the anti-discrimination policy. New York University, a couple of incidents this past week. Well, one was this past week. There was the defacement of a Jewish student's dorm room with anti-Semitic graffiti. This goes along with last week's publicly addressed perpetrations against Jewish students when a Jewish student's mezuzah was torn from their dorm room. Experts told Congress this week about how unions, campus unions, have anti-Semitism running rampant. I'll leave out all the details in the interest of time. Hundreds of academics this week called on the International Association of Genocide Scholars to retract their positively ludicrous resolution last week that was labeling Israel's actions in Gaza as genocide. In the students openly endorsing violence category at Columbia University, the student encampment leader from last year, who became quite notorious for releasing a video in which he said, "People are lucky I'm not going around murdering Zionists," he took to X today or yesterday to praise the murder of Charlie Kirk and call for more violence, literally posting more, more, and down with all fascists. He was apparently never expelled. At Barnard, a student who is the leader of the anti-Israel movement there publicly wished for the Prime Minister of Israel to be assassinated like Charlie Kirk. Inshallah, you're next, she wrote. At the United Kingdom, Leeds students posted images glorifying a terror attack in Jerusalem in which 6 people were murdered this past week. The post featured a machine gun draped in a keffiyeh and Al-Aqsa Mosque with a giant gun. For those who are unclear, celebrating brutal attacks by prescribed terrorist organizations are really not political expression, but extremist propaganda that endangers Jewish people everywhere. In the Students for Justice for Palestine category this week, Philadelphia SJP, which includes groups from Temple, Drexel, Penn, and Swarthmore, had a major protest downtown, wearing keffiyehs and masks and toting signs that read, "No pride in silencing genocide and glory to the resistance." The group then headed over to Temple University itself, where a group of more than 50 demonstrators gathered at the bell tower for a disorientation rally, wearing their keffiyehs, masks, carrying Palestinian flags, and holding signs that read, "Temple funds genocide." They demanded complete disclosure of Temple investments related to Israel and subsequent divestment from Israel. This occurs just 1 week after Temple's president announced the updated Student Conduct Code, which ruled out or prescribed identity concealment, including face masks, as a violation to the policies, and also proscribed the use of megaphones. So these rallies violated basic campus rules there. It remains to be seen what Temple will do about it. K through 12, another busy week, real hotspot. Senator Cotton from Arkansas requested this week that the Education Department look into the relationship between CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, to K through 12 schools. CARE, for those not in the know, represents itself as a civil rights organization for Muslims, but is widely accused of essentially being a forward arm of the Muslim Brotherhood movement and Hamas in the United States. And so why is it important to look into their relationship? Well, things are happening in K through 12. A group called K through 12 Trackers published a deep dive into CARE's affiliations with Philadelphia schools as well as other school districts in Pennsylvania and Delaware. In Santa Clara, California, the Board of Education president there openly embraced terror-aligned activists. This week, she took part in a webinar hosted by several groups who were the organizers of the recent People's Conference for Palestine in Michigan about last week or so. And these groups have ties to U.S. designated terror organizations such as the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. In Brooklyn this week, there was a high school that displayed a massive Palestinian flag in the middle of a hallway in school, despite protests by Jewish teachers. This week, Jewish students at a high school in Nashville were met with the Muslim student group's Keffiyeh Day, seeing loads of students wearing keffiyehs and also promoting a map of Israel labeled Palestine. Coming up in a couple of weeks in Washington State, organizers are putting together a massive walkout for Palestine across all sorts of schools in Washington, aimed to commemorate October 7th. I should say to celebrate October 7th. Their materials openly call for one Palestine from the river to the sea, which of course is an eliminationist slogan, rejecting Israel's existence. They brand Israel as a genocidal state, echoing Hamas propaganda while leaving out everything Hamas does here. They describe October 7th massacre as resistance and heroism, and so forth. In the Jews Are Our Own Worst Enemies department, Brandeis University, the Jewish Bund there, has had a very busy week or two harassing other Jewish students, violating all sorts of rules. I don't have time to go into the details. Go look that one up. Um, more importantly, perhaps a new group seems to have formed, calling themselves the, not at Brandeis, the Anti-Zionist Jewish Front. This seems to be a splinter group from Jewish Voice for Peace, already a very radical group devoted to anti-Israel activity. They seem to want to be a more militant, more radical group. And this so far consists of members of schools from the DC area, Georgetown, George Washington, and American University. If they are indeed more radical than JVP, I have a feeling they'll be appearing in these news headlines quite frequently in the weeks to come, months to come. And finally, anti-Semitism off campus. What a week this was. Couple of thousand or more actors and filmmakers, etc., pledged to boycott the Israeli film industry for its quote complicity in genocide. Israelis and Jews are continue to be erased from the world stage this past week, involving chess, Eurovision, Philharmonic, and tennis. Belgium canceled the performance of a German orchestra because it had an Israeli conductor. Canada, the Davis Cup there, won't allow spectators to watch the Israeli team play. Several European countries have announced they'll withdraw from Eurovision if Israel is allowed to participate. Spain has been harassing the Israeli chess team in a competition there, not allowing them to play under the Israeli flag, unlike all other parties, leaving the Palestinian flag up, forcing them to go to a different hotel to the point where they finally just withdrew from the competition. And Montreal, Canada, there was a report this week summarizing the many anti-Semitic incidents just in August. Time is too short, but there are a half dozen. You probably will remember, in particular, the video of a man being beaten in front, a Jewish man being beaten in front of his children while his children were screaming. That's the news, unfortunately. Tune in next week to see what fresh horrors next week will bring. Again, I'm your host, Andrew Pessin at andrewpessin.com, hoping that everyone manages to keep it together. Till next week.